So we directly go on with the last keynote being presented before the lunch break. The last keynote is being presented by Dr. Nicole. She's working for Accenture as a data and AI value strategy manager, and she's presenting her view on AI industrialization. Thank you.
Exactly.
The stage is yours.
Thank you very much. So pleasure to be here and be able to talk to you on this, for me, very important topic. So focusing on how to bring AI use cases really into production. So how to use them in life, and not only on one individual use case base, but basically across the organization. So how do I manage to bring a whole bunch of use cases into production fast and at scale? And maybe to open this, so imagine you have this super high-speed, top-notch sports car, but you leave it in the garage. It's basically the same concept. So your use cases will only work if, or bring value if you use them. Yeah. So there are a lot of pilots out there, a lot of super cool, innovative concepts, but the true value comes once you apply them in your business processes. So what is needed and what a lot of companies are actually currently working on is developing an industrialized approach of bringing this value on the road, on the track, really realizing this. What are the key components of this? So one is definitely seamless business and IT integration. So it doesn't help if IT is developing something separately, but it also doesn't help if business is doing something by itself. So the combination of both worlds, working closely together in an interdisciplinary team, that's really the key to realize that value. The other thing is, if you set up your company that way, you set yourself up for long-term success. Short-term might be also feasible to do individual cases, step by step, but on the long run, it's good to have some standards, practices in place. And then last but not least, obviously, if you have a standardized approach and the right tools in place, then you also ensure a certain level of consistency, save some costs, and also ensure that you follow compliance and, again, also security requirements. So why isn't everyone already doing it, or why do we even talk about it? It sounds quite straightforward that you need to bring your cases in live use. Well, it's actually not that easy, and we see that a lot of companies are doing something, but not all are there yet. So if we look at this graph, we see that in the lower left corner, a lot of companies have started experimenting. They found first very promising pilots. They actually already showed or have shown in several cases that AI really brings a lot of benefit. Also big data projects, it's not just AI. For me, it's also a lot of value in analyzing data, even in dashboards. But they haven't achieved this target state of the upper right, where you have two additional dimensions. So where you have all the foundations in place, and foundations in this case is quite broad. So it encompasses topics like platform, processes, standards, a certain governance around it that help to scale quickly. And then the other area that is even equally important, or also very important, is anchoring your AI strategy in the business strategy, so combining those two worlds. We've done that at several different clients. We'll also show some examples going forward. For instance, in pharma we did this, so we had this overall strategy of improving product development, so in pharma obviously of new drugs and new medicine. And then we basically looked in all the process steps, how can we integrate AI and data in those processes and totally resync them. And based on this, the factory was set up and then the use cases implemented. So target is to move up there. We see a lot of companies are moving. Some start with the strategic direction, others start with the foundations. I would always recommend to do it in both directions at the same time and then develop this step by step. Because that's when you already realize some value while you are at it. So why is not everyone doing it already? There are obviously some challenges that can be overcome and should be overcome. For me, the two most important, or the ones that I would like to emphasize in this speech, is actually C-level focus. I've seen that at a lot of clients. if C-level commitment is not there, then it's super tough. Yeah, especially for those use cases that bring a lot of value and that also involve a lot of restructuring because the business processes are big and because the processes need to be reworked, that need senior involvement, and it helps a lot to give the speed and also the funding that is needed to make it successful. And it also means not only stating this, but really doing it. So we've seen it, for instance, at one sports apparel company that did forecasting of their sales. So they always produce in seasonal periods, basically, where they basically need to predict how much will be sold in which size. So actually quite straightforward topic. If they do the wrong predictions, then they will order too much or too little, which will result in loss. So what they did, they explored this in one market, and then they wanted to roll it out. And there it was super easy to see that those markets that had a strong leader on top who supported this and pushed this were way much faster implementing this and were way much more successful in reaping the results. But at the end, this was rolled out across the whole company and is one of the really successful cases. The other thing I wanted to highlight is still data. I mean, we're here at the Big-Data.AI Summit, so it's not only about AI, but also the data part. I think it's still a super important, huge topic, where it's about, one, getting access to the data. Even within organizations, this is still a topic. And then the second thing is also ensuring sufficient data quality, which is key for getting the results out of the cases. I think that's super important. We see this in all areas. And that's something where we recommend to basically start with the corresponding use cases. So I wouldn't recommend to start doing all the data that is there. That's super tough, super expensive, and very hard to achieve. It helps a lot to have a concrete business goal and then work towards it. We've seen this at one of the clients, actually rail industry, where we now prepare all the operational data about the rail operations and then put it into dashboards. And there it helps extremely that now that it's consolidated, management is steering by this and also providing feedback and at the end deriving conclusions. And that also is an incentive to improve the data if there are questions. And then you have this loop that kind of benefits itself, and then you have this improvement cycle where it gets better and better because the value increases, and then obviously also the data quality increases. The other ones are important as well, but due to time I won't go into all of them, but happy to discuss maybe after the speech during lunch or one of the coffee breaks. So what is AI industrialization concretely? So it's really including and fully including the AI case in your business process. So it's not about having something at the side, maybe thinking about, oh, what could we do, some experimentation, but it's really taking a comprehensive look, saying, so how should the process look like, and then AI is part of it. Sometimes the results are just some kind of forecast that is used as information input, but other times it's really used in operative processes where the AI basically produces decisions that are then obviously monitored by some person who ensures that the quality is right. So how does this whole pipeline look like? A typical use case starts with an idea. Then in the best case, you start with a proof of concept, then a proof of value. The difference is that for the proof of value, you really already do something live. So you don't start testing something and have some theoretical numbers, but you really have already some result. Example would be you do a marketing campaign and you evaluate it for a small group of users, you would already send it out and check if the results are as expected. And once you see the value is there, and that's very important, only if the value is there. If the value is not given, I would not continue with the case. So it's also important to be brave enough to also stop a use case if it doesn't make sense. So if you earn 50K a month or can save 50K a month with the use case, but it costs you 1 million, it's probably not worth it yet. If you have the foundations, maybe it'll be cheaper to develop it, then it might make sense at some point in time. And then the important part starts, industrialization. So really making sure that now it can go into production. What are the factors there? Sounds easy. You already have the model. It works. Why doesn't it work right away? Because there are a lot of factors that need to be considered. And especially also making it reliable, making sure that security requirements are met, and so on. And then once you've achieved this, then you operate it. So we see that a lot of companies are now starting to set up this organizations that will operate the AI models. Many have experimented a bit, but so far, especially for those that are in the lower left corner who have experimented, they often still do it in the development teams. And now the next step is to have some dedicated organization or some clear plan of how this will be dealt with once you have a lot of use cases live, because obviously you need to maintain them, make sure that they still function well. And then the cool stuff really starts once you scale it. I already had this example with a retailer who scales this across markets, but there are also other cases. So one I like a lot is in pharma industry, where they basically started with doing quality assurance of vials. So in the production process, that's actually a huge issue if those are not okay. So they did visual inspections, AI-based, of those vials. And then they found out, okay, this works. That really saves a lot of money. We implement this. And then they basically scaled this across all their production sites, and they also scaled it across across different products. So not only vials, but all other kinds of things. Same in the automotive industry, where they now scale the quality inspection part of all kinds of car parts. And there it's important that you have this industrialized approach and this scalable approach across the company so that it's easy to add additional whatever it is. So additional products, additional requirements, additional data, so in all dimensions so that this goes smoothly. And actually for the car manufacturer, maybe it's interesting to hear that now it's like possible to get a new use case done in about 6 weeks. So that's super fast. So what are the important factors? So for smooth scaling, so we have basically 3 major statements. One is do the basics brilliantly. So really set up your organization for success. The second one is think practical. I think that's some good advice. I think it's good to think big, but also to build something that can be done at the end. And last but not least, teamwork makes the dream work. Sounds so easy, but it's often so hard to bring the different parties together. And I've seen this in many cases where it worked so well, but also in others where it really made it unnecessarily complicated. And I think the key is really business must be involved. It doesn't help if IT does it alone. But on the other hand, it also won't work if business does it alone. Because really these insights and the way how AI can work, this is something that the IT specialist or AI specialist needs to bring to the table. Because for the business, it's often hard to grasp what AI actually can do. So I think this joint approach is super important. Talking a lot about the fundamentals, as mentioned, many companies are now building these AI factories or data factories, how they often call them, which is basically a standardized approach of implementing those use cases and getting them done. And we identified basically 6 major areas that you need to look into. And they can be done quite differently. It has to fit your organization. And we also have an assessment where you can basically see where in each area you are. Typically, organizations are not strong in all of them, but have some where they excel, and then others where they might have some room for improvement. And I think the important thing is to grow this over time, to make sure to use those things that really are needed for the use cases that you want to implement, and to make sure that this can be scaled. And maybe one remark in terms of governance. For me, it's the most important part to have the governance clear. It doesn't have to be super complex, but it has to be clear and everyone needs to know it. And then if it changes, that's fine. But again, everyone needs to know it and be able to follow this. For me, one part that I would like to highlight here is the architecture part, because I think this can really enable a lot. This is something where it really makes a lot of sense to have a general view on how the architecture should be set up, because then you can use synergies. Setting up a platform is for a business user still super complex. I mean, the new possibilities in the cloud really allow a lot more than it used to be, but still it's super complex for users to set up the cloud architecture so that it's compliant, secure, and in budget. So if this is provided centrally or supported centrally, this can be a huge boost, especially for those smaller cases that I mentioned earlier, where it wouldn't be profitable to do just that case, but then if it's done in conjunction with a lot of others, then it's worth it. And actually one, like the company I mentioned, the sports apparel company, they did it like this. So they had some big use cases that saved a lot of money or earned a lot of money that basically cross-financed the platform. And then a lot of smaller use cases came up, even through self-service. And then they could, this worked in conjunction. Yeah, so maybe to sum it up and not to keep you too long from lunch, again, I used some examples throughout the speech, and the things I wanted to highlight because I was really impressed by those things, and I think these are exactly the right developments are the ones I put on these slides that you see now. So for me, at Pharma, what I found really impressive was one, this founding in the strategy, because this really gave the whole thing a lot more momentum and really helped also the teams to orient themselves. And the second thing was they were super early, I think it was 6 years ago, that they already started setting up a data factory or data engineering factory where they really could develop and produce data products super fast. The other thing I want to highlight is in the railway context, where I see actually in a lot of different railway companies, so it's not one specific one, but it's really across Europe what we see, that a lot are now building up complete AI factories that help to do this standardized approach and really bring across the things fast. And especially in rail, which is a bit of my focus topic, I see that this is really a boost that can help to make the next step, basically. So I find this really impressive, and especially also this business IT collaboration. I think that's key because there's a lot of special expertise that the different colleagues have in the business and very specialized expertise also on AI side. So bringing this together, that's really the game changer from my point of view. And then concluding, this is a case where I really like this business ownership, so that really someone from business was pushing it through. And the other thing that I liked was also the platform part. Unfortunately, I didn't talk too much about it, but maybe we can talk about it later, where it's about really setting up a scalable platform early on, bringing in innovative technologies and really helping use cases to strive. Yeah, and the AI factory for me is a key to bring the car on the road or the helps the train on the track, or whatever the analogy is. So for me, that's the key to success and to make AI valuable. And yeah, I hope I could give some interesting ideas. Would be happy to discuss later on. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Nicole. Maybe one question as a follow-up. So you have a lot of experience within Accenture and also you personally with helping companies to use AI at scale. How did your projects change during the last year when generative AI came up and was such a big topic?
So I think generative AI is still a bit in this early stage where the other projects used to be. So I see that from the other projects, there was a lot more in how to phrase it. So the other ones are now in the stage where they are really doing this in an industrialized approach. Gen AI for me is something that can really help help the cultural change, because a lot of people know it, a lot of people use it, even non-AI experts know it. So I think for this is a super strong enabler. And I think for some of the solutions that were already there, so we already had some search solutions, we had some really cool chatbot solutions and so on. I think for those, this can be a game changer because it's yet a lot more professional and a lot more easier to use. So I think for this can also be a big, big enabler.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Nicole, for your presentation. Happy to have you on stage.
Thank you very much.